My name is Constance, and this is Cruelty-Free Musings. Welcome to Serious Talk Tuesday. Today's discussion point, natural hair brushes.
Hello,
I hope you
YouTube
enjoy.
friends.
Today, we're going to be talking about natural hair brushes. PSA, this might be a sensitive topic for animal lovers. If you think that squirrels and ferrets are the cutest animals in existence, you might not be happy with the content of this video because we will be discussing a certain amount of animal death in this video. At least that's the plan. Alright, so the topic of this video is natural hair brushes. Why would you use them? What's their purpose? I mean, they're synthetic brushes, they've made massive improvements, they're so much cheaper. They are so much cheaper. Like, 90%, I just picked up my cat, so his fur is all over my face. He didn't want to stick around for the video, but that's why you see me brushing hair off my face, because my cat. Hi. He thinks I should be feeding him. You don't get food for 3.5 hours. I hope you realize this. We'll get some pathetic accompaniment to this discussion of animal hair brushes, apparently. He's actually being pretty quiet right now. I don't know if you can actually hear him on the recording. He is half Siamese though, so he can be really loud. Anyway, so to begin our discussion, what are the merits of natural hair brushes? I mean, synthetic brushes have been taking over the market, right? They're in every drugstore. All of the cheap brands, they have synthetic fiber, and even higher end brushes like Too Faced and like what's another brand? It Cosmetics. Even those brushes are transitioning to synthetic fibers. So what's the difference? Why do you still need natural hair brushes? As I mentioned in my intro video, I am a knitter, so I don't just accept that man-made fibers are better intrinsically. I knit with a lot of wool. I'm actually wearing wool socks right now because even though it's 76 degrees in my house, my feet are cold. Hooray. Like, it's warm outside, but my feet are cold. My feet are always cold. So if you look at an article by a makeup artist, an interview with a makeup artist, they will tell you that they use both synthetic and natural fiber brushes. Why? Synthetic is cheaper. It's getting higher and higher quality. It's the fibers of a synthetic fiber brush don't have pores in them because they're made by extraction, by pushing liquid through a metal plate in a machine. They're not, extrusion is the technical term. They're not made by an animal growing it a bit at a time, and it has scales and pores, and all of the scales and the pores have a function on the animal, whether that's keeping it warm or in the case of like a beaver, keeping it waterproof. Minks would also, minks and otters also have the slightly waterproof fur thing. And that's an interaction of their body oils and the actual structure of the fur. So natural fibers have a lot of texture to the actual fibers. If you have a pet, you can kind of see this by just picking up a fur, a piece of fur from, that your pet has shed onto all of your clothing and looking at it. Like my cat has slightly wavy fur. It's not, some of it is longer and straighter, and then other parts of it are a little bit curly. The long straight fur is for providing a protective layer, and then the slightly curly fiber is for it's his undercoat, and it is the same thing as like a cashmere goat. A cashmere goat has an outer layer for weatherproofing and then an inner downy layer that it sheds in the summertime because it's too hot, but you really need that extra insulation in the winter when it's real cold in the Himalayas. Right, so because of these structures inherent to the actual fiber, which you would have to massively process a synthetic fiber in order for it to have. Like you can fray the ends of a synthetic brush, and a lot of cruelty-free brush manufacturers do that, where they have a patented fiber, and then they also have a process that they put the fiber through so that they can make it pick up powder in kind of the same way that a natural fiber brush would, because that's the difference. Synthetic brushes are really smooth, they're not porous, they're not going to absorb a cream or a liquid. They're really great for foundation, concealer, cream brush, contour, bronzer, all of those creamy products. They're going to apply it smoothly with much less streaking. This is a great advancement for makeup, that we have these synthetic fibers that now do a better job of smoothing creamy products onto our skin and letting it meld into the skin and not interfering with that process. A natural fiber brush will tend to leave a streak in a cream product, which if you have a set of really nice natural hair brushes and you ever use one of those to apply a cream shadow, you're like, man, this is terrible. Like, do not. Hi. Hello. I know your life is difficult. He's not starving, but he likes to believe that he's starving. There's a reason that Colourpop, the original formula for Colourpop being the Super Shock Shadow, which is a cream to powder formula, it goes on like a cream. They recommend using synthetic brushes or your finger because you will not get a good application with a natural hair brush. And that's part of the reason that all of their brushes that they have come out with are synthetic as well, because they started out working with cream products, cream-based products, and those are always going to apply better with a synthetic. What an advancement for makeup! Yay! We've been doing makeup for centuries, and finally we can get a smooth, even, streak-free application of a cream product. We're not limited to powders. But natural fibers are really good for it. And if you ask any makeup artist, they will tell you this is why I have natural fiber brushes in my kit. They are really good for picking up powder and putting it down smoothly and evenly so that you get an even distribution of color. So this is why high quality and high end eyeshadow brushes in particular are typically natural hair rather than synthetic. So for example, Morphe brushes are not exactly high-end, but they are high quality, and they use um, they use natural fibers. They use a lot of natural fibers. Most of their synthetic brushes are for face only, and the majority of their eyeshadow brushes use goat hair, beaver. They don't use the more expensive ones like sable, which are really soft, but they're expensive. But they do use the cheap ones like goat and beaver. And I say those specifically because I know that I have a Morphe eye brush set. There's an eyeliner brush which I believe is synthetic. It makes a lot of sense if you're applying a gel eyeliner, you want a synthetic brush for a smooth application. And then there's a beaver hair shader brush, and there is a goat hair blending brush. And they're really nice brushes. I really enjoy how they apply and blend my eyeshadow. The shader brushes I haven't been doing eyeshadow for that long. I need to experiment for a lot longer before I know everything about application. So, now that we've established the difference between natural hair brushes and synthetic brushes, they both have their purposes. Most makeup artists will use both. And by makeup artists, I mean professional makeup artists who are doing primarily, who their job is doing makeup on other people for photo shoots and things like that. Makeup artists have both synthetic and natural hair brushes in their kit because they serve different purposes. So now we get into, can a natural hair brush be cruelty-free? Well, that depends. It depends on the animal that the fur is coming from, primarily. And it also depends on how you define cruelty-free. So for example, goats have an outer coat and an inner coat, and this is true of all goats, including the specialty goats, mohair goats, and cashmere goats, which live in the Alps or are from the Alps and the Himalayas specifically. They have really long, dense undercoats because they live in really cold places. But all goats have this general structure where they have coarse guard hairs that weatherproof them, and they have an inner layer that they shed in the summertime because they live up in the mountains. It gets really cold in the wintertime, but then in the summer it does warm up. So goat hair, you can probably get a cruelty-free goat hair brush because a goat is going to be shedding a substantial amount of its fur every year. And goats are one of those, you know, they live for, I don't know what an average goat lifespan is, like 8 to 10 years. They can produce fiber for all of this time while they're being, you know, kept alive for other purposes like milking and you know, milking for cheese and goat milk and that kind of thing. And so this is probably a great way to get a sustainable, ecologically friendly, natural hair blending brush to carry on. Goat hair can be cruelty-free, probably is cruelty-free in the majority of cases where we got this lot of fiber off of a goat. It shedded over the course of its season, and we have, you know, we have a lot of fiber that we can make cruelty-free makeup brushes with. And then there are animals like the most obvious one is mink. I don't think that there are any brushes made out of mink, but when you're talking about natural lashes, those are usually mink or silk. And the problem with cruelty-free mink lashes, something like that, is that you have to completely change the lifestyle of the mink in order to put it on a fur farm. Like, minks are not domesticated in any way. You can't keep them in a pen that's large enough for them because their territory is miles. Like, it's like keeping a panther in a cage. They're really solitary, so you can't keep them with other minks because they'll fight and kill each other. And then they're also semi-aquatic. They really like the water. So there again, it's going to be really difficult to provide them with an environment that makes them happy and also have a sustainable farm. Like, a mink is not going to be happy in a cage. Probably. Just because they are super not domesticated. They are extremely undomesticated. They're like ferrets, but more so. I believe they're from the same family. If you know, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. The comment section is right down there. So, realistically, for a mink, you are having to either kill it and get its fur off its corpse, or you're having to completely change its lifestyle and habitat and basically imprison it. So I really don't think that mink is something that I personally would be on board with using. There's a little more to the cruelty-free discussion, though. There's this image floating around the internet and the beauty community that, oh yes, we have a squirrel shaving industry, and that's how we get our squirrel hair for our natural hair brushes. Which is not reasonable. Squirrels are not natural, like they produce fur, but they're not fiber-bearing animals. They weren't bred to produce fur. So I don't think that if you shaved a squirrel that it would that it would actually grow a coat fast enough to survive the next winter. Right? Like I have no problems with sheep being sheared because sheep have been losing their fur for millennia at this point. Over the summer and fall, they grow another coat of fur and they keep it over the winter. And then they're like, by the springtime, they're like, oh my goodness, get this off of me. So these are completely different use cases. Like most fiber doesn't come from this, it's shed by an animal that's still alive, and this is a sustainable process where we're keeping the animal in circumstances that it finds comfortable. Most most brushes, most natural hair brushes would come from a circumstance more like the mink, where we're either having to kill the animal or substantially change its habitat in order to farm it, probably in a way that it doesn't find comfortable. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about my personal opinion and my view on natural hair versus synthetic, and what style of natural hair I personally, and feel free to disagree with me. Again, the comments section is a great place for discussion and debate and no name calling. So my personal opinion about natural fiber brushes is that a lot of these brushes are created from animal pelts, the skinned animals that are dead. And if you are the vegetarian, vegan, I am really opposed to harming animals at all style of cruelty-free, that will already be enough for you. I'm not. I don't have a problem with honey or with wool or this is another controversial one, silk. I don't really have a problem with. So, so that by itself is not enough to stop me from using, for example, a badger hair brush. Let's put this in context. So, the majority of electricity in the United States is produced by hydroelectric plants. That is, by damming rivers, producing waterfalls, that kind of thing. Do you know an animal that also lives in rivers? Beavers! Beavers live in rivers and also make dams. They're not generating electricity off of it, but they also create dams. So when you have this kind of conflict of interest, where you have a hydroelectric plant that's damming a river to create electricity, and a beaver that's damming a river to create its own habitat, you're going to get some beaver corpses. as a result of this. I am not necessarily on board with the concept of destroying an entire animal's ecosystem and natural habitat to produce electricity. But given that we were already doing that as humans, the natural consequence of that is going to be dead beavers, because they are going to be interfering with our production of electricity. That is how business works. Electric plants are going to be paying hunters to go and exterminate beavers and dismantle dams. Those are probably two different jobs. Whatever. You get the point. There are dead beavers as a result of this conflict. Given that, I would rather use the whole thing. So I wouldn't eat beaver, but given that we are hunting beavers because if we didn't, then entire towns' electricity supplies would be disrupted on a major scale, then I am okay with using the pelts of the dead beavers in order to produce natural fiber brushes. This is part of my philosophy of use everything. Like, I think that an important part of ecological sustainability is actually taking care with what you buy, what you kill, what you eat, you know, what you throw away, being concerned with every step in the process. And if there are, hi, my animal is accusing me of being cruel. He still has 3 hours to wait. If there are animal corpses, then let's make the best use of those animal corpses possible. Again, as I established in my introduction, I don't have a problem with eating animals. I don't have a problem with killing animals. My problem is with keeping animals alive to make them suffer, or in a way that makes them suffer, which is why I'm opposed to animal testing. If you are interested in a more in-depth, slightly discombobulated discussion of that, you can look at the video, which will be linked up here in the cards. So, I'm not opposed to using beaver hair brushes because I think that these animals, a large portion of them would have died already, would have died anyway. And so we are, by recycling their pelts to make makeup brushes, we are making use of something that would otherwise go to waste. And I am opposed to waste. I'm opposed to waste of life. I'm opposed to waste of resources. So, I would rather that the animals not die in the first place, but given that the animals are dead, then let's make use of them. The situation for squirrels is probably pretty similar to the situation for beavers. They're pest animals. They get into everything. They cause a lot of property destruction and damage. So, as a result of that, some of them wind up dead. And again, situation, I would rather the animal not die. Given that the animal is dead, let's make use of the resources that it leaves behind. So, make brushes out of squirrel tail. Hi. Not actually out of squirrel tails. That would be an awkward shape. But out of the dense, fluffy fur that you would shave off of a squirrel tail. You would. I can see that making a good brush. I've never seen a squirrel hair brush, to my knowledge. So, this is my general philosophy. I would say, as a whole, that I am against fur farming, unless it's something, unless it's an animal that is already going to naturally be shedding its fur, or that is going to want to be sheared, such as the animals that we have already discussed to completion, which would be goats and sheep. Bison also have the dense undercoat and the guard hairs on top. Bison is really soft and really expensive because bisons have huge territory and they do not shed, they shed their fur all over the entire territory. It's very labor intensive to go and gather bison hair. But I have touched bison hair yarn, bison fur yarn. It is very, very soft. It's kind of Kiviot style, which Kiviot is bison family, kind of musk ox family that are native to Alaska and Canada, that region. I have been a rambly person today. The summary is, I am not opposed to using natural hair brushes. I am opposed to fur farming. I am opposed to keeping minks and sables in captivity in order to harvest their fur. I am not opposed to harvesting fur off of dead animals that were killed for purposes other than harvesting them for makeup brushes. So, for example, I'm probably not on board with sable anything just because they're another mink ferret family thing. So they're going to be really wild and really solitary, really difficult to farm, and really, I don't think that there's any purpose to killing a sable other than to harvest the fur. So I'm opposed to killing just to harvest fur. I am not opposed to, if the animal has died for another reason, using the fur for makeup brushes. That's my philosophy. Oh, look at that hole. I like this shirt. I'm not willing to mend it. It's kind of a cheap shirt. I think it's JCPenney brand. I definitely got it at JCPenney. That's my philosophy on natural hair versus synthetic brushes. They both have their uses. There are circumstances in which I would use a natural hair brush, but I do care what animal it comes from. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, do whatever you feel like. Thanks for watching. I've enjoyed having you here. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.